Oops. As you know, this is the Conradina Native Plant Society. We're a member of the Florida Native Plant Society. And our mission is to promote the preservation, conservation, restoration of native plants and native plant communities in Florida here. We have a monthly meeting, the second Monday of the month. This will be our last meeting until September. So we're taking the summer off.
June.
Yes, and in June, we're going to have a board meeting at Erna Nixon Park at 11 a.m. And everyone's invited to come out to see how the board meetings work. And then we're going to have a tour of Erna Nixon Park afterwards. And these are your board members. Erna Nixon, correct. Pardon? It will be Sunday, June 11th, I do believe. And these are your board members. Yeah, I know. We'll
Tell them. It's in the newsletter.
Yeah. Everything it will cover here will be is in and will be covered in the newsletter. So this is just basically just to let you know in person. Here are board members. There's Linda Goretzi. She's our vice president.
Till you get up there.
Jane Higgins is our treasurer in the back there, standing against the wall. There's Terry LaPlante back in the back, giving out name tags and tickets for the plant drawing. Martha Stewart is our chapter rep. She's out there selling books. There's Carol Hebert. She's our past president. There's Anna Dosha. She's right up front here. Skip Healy, I don't believe he's here tonight. Catherine Mary, she's in the back with the refreshments. Sarah Morrison is, where's Sarah? Hey, in the back, okay. Karen Mosier, and then Dave Zeiss, and I am Carl Weinbarger. And we ask you to please silence your phone during the meeting, and we'll be giving away the plants after the presentation. Our speaker gives their presentation. Now let Linda come up here and talk to this. Watch out for the cord.
Good evening. I'm Linda Girassi. I'm the vice president and one of the co-chairs for the garden tour this year. You can hear me, right? Okay. So the slide is slightly wrong. The location of
see if this is something you'd be interested in, because soon we're gonna need more people. Then we're gonna do a tiny bit of announcements, and at noon, we'll just, a couple announcements like our general meeting would be, and then we're gonna all have brunch. So if everybody would bring your own lunch / brunch, that would be wonderful. Conradina will provide drinks and desserts. So we appreciate that for you guys coming. And then afterwards, we're gonna do a little tour of the boardwalk. If anybody hasn't been to Ernenixon Park. Who has not been to Ernenixon Park? Very nice to have a low level of that, because I love it. It's a cool little hidden place. So please pencil that in. And you might see it as soon as we get the video up, that it's that date. I think that's it for me. Am I to start introducing the speaker, Carl?
Yeah.
President Carl? Can I get that request?
Yeah, I'm trying to get the slide back up.
So again, at the end of the meeting, we're also going to do the draw and see what it looks green back there. That's almost a garden right on the back table. So when you take something out, this will be just at the end of the show when we want you to take it out. But we do ask you to also put your chairs to the wall too. So I'll do some closing announcements as we're trying to get going.
Is it on?
Because we do have a wonderful speaker and a good friend of mine. We have Margaret Broussard here with us. And she's with the Forever Florida, which is out, if you head out 192 and see that flashing light of Holapaw, make a left.
They now have a traffic light.
Oh, it's a true traffic light. Oh, my goodness.
They're getting up in the world.
It's scary. It's scary because I liked it when it was an old-fashioned road, but now it's got a light. Oh no! We'll still take a left at that light. So Forever Florida began in the mind of a boy. Our son Allen had loved roaming the woods on and around the Crescent J Ranch and fishing. It was the Bull Creek woods that he saw a Florida panther one day. And from then on, those woods were his favorite secret of his because he is not supposed to be trespassing when he climbed through the fence. Years later, while in the hospital waiting for a new heart, he thought a lot about all the wild places he had enjoyed and visited, and expressed a wish to his dad that the area around Bull Creek, his old secret, could be preserved. When his dad thought it might be possible, Allen got really excited about the idea, calling his friends to tell them about it. But then, sadly, Allen died of a complication of heart transplant, and my husband, meaning Margaret, and her husband, Dr. Bill Broussard, decided that we would do our best to save what is now Forever Florida. At least half of Forever Florida is swamp and cypress domes and slough and a creek and wet prairies or a marsh. Oh, I love that. The Nature Conservancy advised us to set up our own conservancy, and our children and grandchildren are aboard now, and they will finish the job after I'm gone. But she is not gone yet, so I'd like to present Margaret Broussard.
Now I have this. Is it turned on?
I think so. I think you're right. Her collar
Is this on?
Can I turn this off?
Am I on? No, I didn't think so. I'm not on.
She still needs this one as well?
Oh, okay.
Excellent.
That's fine. That's fine. Oh, okay. Can I come over here?
Yeah.
Well,
Will that clipper work over there for her to do her changes of pictures?
Yeah, well, let me get her slides up here.
I have a clicker.
Madam Clicker.
Madam Clicker.
Okay.
Well,
Let's see if he's got it all set up. Hold on.
Thank you, Carol.
1 second, let's see if our
Yeah,
technician is ready for us.
yeah, we need the right picture. My clicker is my daughter, Laura. I'm gonna say click and she's gonna click it, okay? That's to leave my hands free to play with, you know. Anyway, I'm delighted to be here. And I'm going to use a script because otherwise I might ad lib and waste time. So I'm sorry, it may sound like I'm reading a little bit sometimes. I want to put this down. I'll put it here.
Slide it that way. Yeah, let's just go from this and see if it just pops its way in. Is that okay?
Yeah, but, oh.
Don't do me, don't do what I'm doing. That's on, good. Are you okay with just talking from there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, because they're going to be looking there. But we have to have something to look at first.
Yeah, I had to restart the computer, it froze.
Uh-oh. I'm going to wait for the pictures.
Yeah.
There's the best part. It's so good when it works.
While we're waiting for that, can you tell us, is there a lot of development going in around where you are now?
No, not so far.
I'm gonna give you the mic.
We had, for a while, we had on our board of directors, Tony Catanese, who was past president of, all right. I'm answering a question here. Oh, great, okay. And anyway, to answer your question, Tony Catanese, who was a past president of Florida Tech, also had been an urban planner. So his prediction as an urban planner was that Forever Florida would be like the Central Park for Central Florida. That's what he expects. I hope I don't live to see that. Okay, well, anyway, Carol, thank you, Carol. And first of all, Forever Florida is a place, as most of you know. It's not, oh, click. The entrance is through our adjoining ranch, the Crescent J Ranch. It's not that state land acquisition program that succeeded Preservation 2000, if you remember that, P2000, and that's Florida Forever. But we had our name first, Forever Florida, and it is a place, a 3,000-acre conservation area in Osceola County. And adding the Crescent J Ranch to Forever Florida puts a total of 4,300 acres under our protection. Have any of y'all been out there? How many of you been out there? Oh my goodness, wow, lots of people. Okay, well, it's 7.5 miles south of Holopaw, which is where that traffic light is that Carol mentioned. We had 5 of these safari coaches, we called them, for our eco safaris when we were open to the public and had daily scheduled tours. We closed that business in 2019 and sold 4 of the coaches and saved 1 for field trips. Field trips are free. Tours are paid for. We don't have tours anymore, but the field trips are free, but donations to our nonprofit Allen Broussard Conservancy are gratefully accepted. Our visitor center is still available for meetings. The kitchen is closed, but tables and chairs are there inside for us to have a picnic lunch, and the restrooms are open, which is important. Let me back up a few years, though, to tell you why we started this project that is absorbing all of our time and money. There has to be a good reason to do something so economically dangerous as this. I'm trying different sounds, Laura. We had a son, Allen, who was an ordinary nice little boy except for one thing. He was, even from early childhood, a talented naturalist. That is, he observed and understood the way nature worked. Because of that, I started taking him to Audubon Society meetings when he was about 9 years old, and the thing he wanted most of all for Christmas that year was a spotting scope. And that beautiful eastern indigo snake stopped by our Satellite Beach yard for a visit in 1971. And right after that, the town had a snake eradication program. That scope was his favorite possession of all times. He's in college in Colorado there in the right-hand picture. He was 11 when he raised a mockingbird from babyhood. It would come when he called it, chee, chee, and light on his hand. And it still remembered us a year later after it had matured and flown away. It would come back to our backyard and call Allen, chee, chee, come out and play with me. Allen had heard that Colorado State had the best wildlife biology program in the country. So of course that's where he wanted to go to college. After a 2-year break from school, being treated for the cancer of lymphatic system known as Hodgkin's lymphoma that he was diagnosed with at age 19. How many people are from Satellite Beach? You remember the furor about the cancer center and everything? Allen was, this is ad-libbing, I wasn't going to do it, but I'm going to do it. Allen was one of 3 Satellite High boys that got Hodgkin's from water skiing in the Banana River up by the Patrick Air Force Base, which used to be Banana River Naval Station, and when the Navy turned it over to the Air Force, they buried a lot of toxic chemicals. You all have heard this story, I'm sure. And it happened that there was an epidemic of mononucleosis at Satellite High, and these boys had enlarged lymph nodes while they were out water skiing, and there is a proven connection between mono and Hodgkin's. So the Satellite Beach people would probably know some of that already. Anyway, his sister Laura finished high school in those 2 years, and right at the right time to go to CSU, Colorado State, to be with him and make sure he went to all his checkups. She later became an oncology nurse. They both were honor grads and got to wear gold caps and gowns instead of the regular forest green, and they led the class in the academic procession. As a graduate student, Allen had a research project studying a rare wading bird called the Yuma clapper rail. He trapped the birds, attached transmitters and antenna to their backs, and charted their movements. And he's amused by what the bird did on his hand in that middle picture. He said that showed the bird trusted him. It was out there that he had a major heart attack. His heart had been damaged by the chemotherapy and radiotherapy he had had for treatment for Hodgkin's disease. Surgeons patched up his heart well enough for him to go to graduate school and work on a PhD, but before he finished, he had to have a heart transplant at age 28. The first thing Allen wanted to do when he got out of the hospital in California after 2 open heart surgeries, the thing he had longed to do all while in the hospital was get out in the country with that scope. This was that day. You can probably tell he was in pain. He told me he had a crick in his neck, but what he really had was a clogged jugular vein from all the needle sticks. I had to take him back to the hospital for more surgery very early the next morning after that. While waiting for a new heart to become available, he and his dad were talking about the land next to the ranch, which had been sold off in the 60s and 70s in a land scam, which actually protected it because nobody could do anything with their land. And so that's why it's what it is, Forever Florida today. And anyway, Allen was asking his dad whether he thought there was some way it could be protected. He had crossed the fence to roam around over there as a boy, and once, as Carol read, he saw a Florida panther in the Bull Creek hammock, somewhere near that spot right there. And he asked his dad whether he thought there was some way to preserve it, and my husband thought it might be possible even if we had to purchase it. And so Allen got all excited, and we learned from his friends later that he called them from the hospital to tell them about it. How his dad, who could do anything, was going to save this land for him.
Right in the middle there.
Yep. So when he died from complications of the heart transplant, we decided we would try to preserve that land and formed a nonprofit corporation, the Allen Broussard Conservancy, to begin purchasing it lot by lot from about 500 owners all around the country. The most common rabbit on Forever Florida is marsh rabbit. Notice its little ears. Our little cottontails you see around drier lands have longer ears. When we began to think about the long-term continuation of this project, we saw that we would need help to finish it. In order to get some help, we decided to try bringing visitors interested in nature out to see it and educate them about its value and let them contribute to its continued purchase and management. We did try for almost 20 years, but location, location, location. Forever Florida is just too far from any population center or tourist destination, and people just don't want to drive way out there. Not enough people anyway, so we had to give up on that ecotourism business. Not on our goal of saving Forever Florida, though. We have acquired about 93% of the acreage, and every year we get more. In 2021, we got 17 lots, about 50 acres. In 2022, we got 11, almost 30 acres, and so far this year, we have acquired 16.25 acres. We offer standard price of $1,000 an acre, which is more than the assessed value, which is usually around $600, $650, sometimes a lot less if it's in the middle of a swamp, which a lot of it is, you know. And so some people, though, still think we're some kind of a scam. When we're offering them money for their land, they think we're a scam. It didn't make sense, but I started sending them our newsletter a little over a year ago in January, and now they are seeing pictures of the alligators, the birds, the things that are out there, and people standing out in the middle of nowhere where there's no building in sight and no road or anything, and that is why we've picked up a few more lots, I think. People see, oh, it really is what they say it is. Yeah, okay. Oh, let's see, back up to the bald eagle, yeah. Eagles are seen on the natural preserve part of Forever Florida, but more often on the adjoining Crescent J Ranch, especially at calving time. They go for the afterbirths, after the calf is born. The placentas are there on the ground. Easy pickings, they don't have to kill anything to get them. They just have to get them away from the cow. Because did you know what the cow does after a baby's born? Some of you do. I see some heads nodding. They'll turn around and eat the placenta. A cow eating something that is not vegetable, and they're vegetarians and herbivores, because it stimulates the milk production if they get it. It triggers the hormones. Forever Florida is on the Florida Birding Trail, meaning that it's a site listed by the state as a prime place to see birds. Wildlife photographers can come to Forever Florida anytime. They just have to let us know when. They proudly share their best work with us. And what do you think of those two pictures? Wow. Wildlife, let's see. Most of the best pictures are taken by wildlife photographers Jim Angie. Anybody know Jim Angie? Yeah, I see a hand or two. Yeah. Jim Angie and his sidekick, Bill Krotz, and they have free run of our property, and they give us their wonderful pictures in return. Ibis, egrets, herons, and anhinga nest on the island in front of the visitor center. Here, a large flock of ibis is coming in to roost in the late afternoon. That is something to see. Okay, what are those blotchy birds up there on the top and the left? You know what they are? Huh? Well, immature white ibis. They were nested and hatched and fledged on the island, on the rookery, and have flown with their parents over to a nearby pine tree that's not on the island. Okay. How about that picture? Wow. That's Jim Angie and a long lens. He inherited my husband's big long lens. Okay, usually a pair of sandhill cranes will raise one chick. I'm sure you know that. Sometimes two. So you'll see them flying in threes and in fours after the chicks learn to fly. Okay, now the white bird on the right, I'm sure you can see it, standing to the left of the two sandhill cranes is a whooping crane. And whooping cranes are still on the brink of extinction, but there have been some successes in the efforts to bring them back. The only migrating whooping crane population left nests in Canada's Wood Buffalo National Park. That population winters in and around Aransas National Wildlife Refuge, which is located on the Texas Gulf Coast. There is a non-migratory population in Central Florida that the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission introduced in 1993. And the one in this picture came from there, visited Forever Florida looking for a mate, but it was a fruitless search. We had two marshes in the back, and we really were hoping that maybe they'd stay, but they didn't. Anyway, it didn't work out. We're seeing more and more caracaras in Central Florida, and I understand I'm really supposed to call them caracaras, because that's the sound they make, I understand. You know, I just learned that, so I have to share my knowledge with you. Okay, and so we're seeing more because their range is moving northward due to global warming. And at least one pair nests regularly on the ranch. And you'll often see one or more from US 192 as you cross the St. Johns River floodplain. Watch for those white wing patches when they fly, because as you can see from the beak, they are an eagle. They used to call it the Mexican eagle, and at some time in the past, that was the bird that was on the Mexican flag perched on a saguaro cactus, but they decided the golden eagle looked better, so they've changed their flag, and we don't see the caracara on it anymore. Even though my husband didn't have his long lens with him when he caught that, or he saw that owl out in the sunlight in the left-hand picture there, he couldn't pass up the chance to photograph it just because it was out in the sun. But Jim Angie took the other picture of the pair. You should be in their woods at dusk around Bull Creek. It is hilarious. They're chattering back and forth in owl talk, and it's just so funny you just can't help laughing. And some people think it's spooky, but they're really just talking to each other. When I was a child, this was a common bird, the loggerhead shrike. They're pretty rare now. We called them, as children, we called them butcher birds because they could catch a grasshopper or a lizard or a frog or a little snake and go stick it on a thorn or a barbed wire fence barb and leave it wiggling there to die. Well, you know, as children, that looked so mean, but they're just doing what they've evolved to do. They're today's little dinosaurs, you know. When we moved to Satellite Beach from Germany in 1967, we'd see flocks of these on the power lines at migration time. Now what do we see up there? Maybe you see up there English sparrows, English starlings, not sparrows, English starlings migrating, alien birds brought by homesick English people. We've planted, though, hundreds of red cedars on the Crescent J, and cedar waxwings do visit them when migrating through. They're a beautiful bird, I think. Okay. What are these cute little bitties? They're called poults, as in poultry. When they grow up, they look like these. Our race of the American wild turkey, the Osceola turkey, is the nation's most prized turkey by hunters because of its burnished bronze-colored feathers. In the sunlight, they look like great big new pennies. sorry it doesn't show. It shows that they are shining, but somehow the color is not quite right. Anyway, they're prized by the hunters. If you hear a loud bird whistle from the trail coach on Forever, Florida on a field trip, ask if that's a towhee. Limpkins are pretty rare, but this one hangs around the island in the front of the visitor center and the slough across the road from that lake. The Indians called the limpkin the crying bird for its strange cry, a little like a baby's cry, but not much. Yeah, Jim Angie. Let's see, the bird that I was talking about would cry and cry and cry and cry and cry until finally another one heard it and came to be its mate. So it paid off to cry. Settlers named the limpkin for its limping gait. I once saw one limping around in a slough one day, a couple of days in a row. And I thought, that thing is still here and it's still hurting. What in the world happened to it anyway? Did an alligator grab its foot? I couldn't see any damage. And then later when I heard about why it was called a limpkin, I felt a little foolish, but. Now, you may have seen otters in the zoo. And our last field trip, just a couple of weeks ago, because it had been very dry out there, the Bull Creek had become Bull Puddle, and the otters that normally are in the canals had moved in, and our field trip saw an otter come right beside us up the Bull Creek on our boardwalk out there. That was the first time I'd ever seen it, but it was fun. These were on the Crescent J Ranch, and unfortunately, otters are all too often caught by these guys. We have a lot of these, of course. They are the main predators of otters. The main predator of young gators, besides man, is Dad. We do have a very successful mother alligator who seems to be able to keep Dad from eating the kids. Maybe she distracts him, lures him away with her feminine wiles, perhaps. There are several kinds of water turtles in our waters. This one was a real big a soft-shell turtle that somebody gave us. That's why it was in a tub. And my husband's just getting ready to pitch it into one of the canals out there. Okay. So there's several kinds of water turtles there and several kinds of land turtles. Now, I saw 3 in an Audubon Society meeting. I saw 3. Somebody had brought in babies like this one. One of them had a lot more yellow on it than that one. Another one of the 3, they were all from the same clutch. One of them was more yellow, one of them was more brown, and one of them was kind of reddish brown with yellow spots on it. The mother gopher lays her eggs in what they call the apron of the gopher hole out in front, the sandy part right in front. And so they'd all come from the same nest, same clutch. When they grow up, they look like that, more like that. Okay, now if you try, you can see that these are beautiful animals. The eastern indigo is our nation's longest snake, and the only one that eats adult eastern diamondback rattlesnakes. It's easy to pick up, doesn't bite. You remember that picture of Allen holding one up as a boy? And it is so docile that it has been hunted almost to extinction for the pet trade. I'm going to ad lib here. I was in the visitor center at Merritt Island Wildlife Refuge, and a guy came roaring up in his pickup truck, slammed on the brakes, skidded, jumped out and came in. He was so excited he had to tell everybody that he had just seen something he'd never seen before in his life. He said, a great big gopher snake, that's one of the local cracker names for the indigo. A great big old gopher snake was swallowing head first a rattlesnake, and they were spread out, so they were both so long they spread out across the road, and I got both of them. I had to tell you that story. On Merritt Island Wildlife Refuge, right in the visitor center, he comes in and announces having killed two wildlife animals. Okay. Okay, without fire, Florida's natural ecosystems change, so we burn. When the conditions meet certain wind and humidity criteria, and we have a burn permit, here's what we do. We go around on the downwind side of the area that we're going to burn. And it's surrounded, we have all the way around the area that we're going to burn, we have fire breaks, either plowed or natural fire breaks. And so we start a fire on the downwind side, burning into the wind, a backfire it's called. And the burn boss goes around with a drip torch, dropping burning drops of oil onto dry grass or palmettos to start the fire. And the backfire is against a hammock there. You can see the trees in the background, so it's a natural fire break there. And then after you get the fire going into the wind on the downwind side, after it's burning what we call a black line up a ways, then we go around to the upwind side and set the fire, and then and it runs with the wind and a head fire. And that's the way, of course, nature wildfires would go in nature. So that's when we're mimicking nature with a really hot fire. A lot of ranchers will burn at a different time of year because they burn in the winter. They want to bring some grass up for their cattle in the winter. But nature burned at the beginning of the thunderstorm season, which is usually, like later on this month, and into the summer, and so that's when we burn out there to make it look like nature. And before, so here sometimes it's kind of exciting to watch. You'll see a head fire, and you may be feeling the heat from it from a distance, and you're hearing the roar, and it's kind of exciting. And here's this other fire coming, and the two fires are going to come together, and what's going to happen? They both go out. And there's nothing but smoke left. So you're thinking, it's exciting, and then that's almost like an after effect. But if nature set them in the spring and the early summer when the thunderstorms start after a dry winter. And before towns, agriculture, and highways cut up and changed Florida, a head fire like this might run 100 miles before it ran into wetlands or rain. But now, wildfires are, the Forest Service is required by law to come and put out a wildfire, which is why we have to have burn permits so they know that this is on purpose, not wild. And boy, do they make a mess. We had a wildfire come across a fence and really mess up, not the fire. The fire was fine, but the Forest Service came with their little boys with toys, I called them, because they came and had a kind of a plow that would dig a ditch and throw the dirt up to make a fire break, which is fine, except it doesn't go away by itself. You have this ditch, and you either have to pay somebody to come out and flatten it out again, or it's there. Okay. So Florida evolved with fire, and to keep Florida's natural wilderness natural, we burn. And this is the result. This is natural Florida, not high palmettos, high grasses. Several species of prairie grasses, some the same species as our western prairies, like chalky bluestem and other bluestems, are in our Florida prairie. And these are on Forever Florida. I'm going to ad lib again. In the last ice age, a lot of the water of the earth was in ice, and so the sea level had dropped down, and the Gulf of Mexico was like a prairie. And that is how we got the same species that are in the west here, not only of the grasses, but also of scrub jays, and our gopher tortoise is a lot like the desert tortoise from the west, and all of those species had free range across what's now the Gulf of Mexico. And they've speciated because our scrub jays are different from the western scrub jays a little bit, but the grasses are the same. They're the same. Lopsided Indian grass has evolved the strategy of waiting a year after a fire to bloom. If it bloomed at the same time as the straight up grasses, it would get tangled in them and get its flowers torn off. It's lopsided not because the wind is blowing it, but because the flowers and seeds come out on one side of the stem. It might be the sun that determines which side, because they're all the same, but that side is heavier than the opposite side, so it leans over. And a few years ago, the blazing star, on the right, purple flower, stalk was so popular in florist arrangements that we began to worry about people trespassing and stealing so many of them that the species might get in trouble, like the indigo snakes from people stealing them. But it turned out that many people were allergic to it, and the flower had a miraculous salvation. We were surprised at the abundance of wildflowers that appeared after we started the regular controlled burns. Forever Florida illustrates why the Spanish named this land La Florida, the flowery place, or the flowered place. It's hard to believe that this wildflower, Polygala rugelii, is endangered because we see them blooming in profusion on Forever Florida. Sorry. Another polygala, and yellow buttons. Yellow buttons are Baldwina angustifolia, named for the botanist William Baldwin, who discovered them. Angustifolia, you all know, means what? No, it's the leaf. Angustifolia. The folia is for the leaf. Angusti means narrow. Means narrow leaf. Okay, I'm sorry I did that. I thought y'all would. Anyway, now you know. Now, the pine lily in the books, now I'm not sure whether it's in all of the books, but in some of the books say that it's a solitary plant. But that may be due to the fact that the feral pigs like them so much that they eat most of the bulbs. When we got ahead of the hog population out there just once, we saw them in clusters of up to a dozen. Now, Sabbatia grandiflora, the large flowered Sabbatia. Am I pronouncing that right? Martha? Where's Martha? Sabbatia or Sabbatia? Either way? Okay, because I was saying Sabbatia and I thought it was wrong. Okay. Anyway, the large flowered Sabbatia has 5 petals and 5 pointed yellow star. Bartram's Sabbatia has 10 petals and a 10-pointed yellow star. Do you think maybe this one started as a mutant of the other one? We see many meadow beauties, but this picture my husband took of the grass pink on the right is the only known photo of that particular unnamed species. It has the 2 long tails that are not on the other grass pinks, on the orchidy-looking flower. We never have seen it again. It was a mutation, maybe, that might never have been replaced or might have been. We will not know. We do not know. If you ever get out there and find another one, we sure want to know about it. These are called star rush because in wet spots they come out like stars. Some pitcher plants have an open top like a pitcher. I guess you know. As you know, the pitcher is a modified leaf with the edges curled around and stuck together, more like a vase. Inside is a sweet-smelling but slippery fluid on stiff hairs all pointing down. You probably know all of this. The insect smells the nectar, crawls up into the hood, thinking it can go through the clear window on the back side, but oops, it slips down and it can't crawl back up against those hairs. it's trapped. And worse, that fluid is digestive juice. The insect donates its nitrogen, phosphorus, etc., other minerals to the plant, which needs it to grow in Florida's poor soil. This pitcher plant is one of 2 carnivorous plants on Forever Florida. The other sundew, lower left corner, doesn't have such a pretty flower. Maybe you can see it, tiny pinkish white blossom on a tall stalk. The yellow fringed orchid is another ground orchid, and this one is in the flower guides. The buttonbush flower looks like Sputnik to me, has antennas all over it. Now you tell me, what looks like antennas, are those separate little flowers, Martha, or somebody?
Yeah, it's a cluster, and those are the stamens sticking out.
Those are the stamens that are sticking out. So those are all separate little flowers of the composite flower. Okay, that's what I kind of guessed, but I didn't really know. Okay, and the tar flower, the calyx, the cup holding the petals is very sticky. In pioneer days, girls didn't have jewelry, so they wore flowers. They could stick a tar flower on each earlobe, and they'd last through an evening of square dancing, so I've been told. Now, the giant swallowtail down in the corner isn't quite as large as the tiger swallowtail. It's larger than the giant swallowtail. If you have a citrus tree, you probably see them in your yard. The colors and stripes on both of these swallowtails give them their names. If you see our state butterfly, its appearance will remind you of its name. And if you plant firebrush in your yard, you'll see them. What is this one? What? Well, I put the name there. Somebody said monarch. And the monarch is a bigger and oranger, and if you see them together, you wouldn't confuse them. But the dead giveaway, if you only see the viceroy by itself, is those bars on the hind wings. Now you see the monarch does not have wing bars, but it has 2 black spots. Those are glands that produce pheromones that help it with its love life. It's, what was I going to say? Anyway, the distinctively striped caterpillar of the monarch metamorphoses into an adult in a bright green pupa there. The viceroy's pupas look like bird droppings on purpose. What bird would eat something so gross? The milkweed, okay, in this picture is an introduced one. The native, which is much better for the monarch, has a solid color flower. And if somebody has a picture of a native species, I'd like to add it to this PowerPoint, if you can get it to me. And the alien ones, the exotic, that picture there, mess up the migration pattern of the monarch. Click. They migrate from the northern U.S. and southern Canada to central Mexico to a special reserve in the forest where they have been coming for centuries and are a part of the indigenous people's folklore. Their unique migratory pattern covers several generations, each generation covering perhaps 10% to 20% of the route. They lay eggs along the way, and the next generation continues the migration. No single butterfly goes the whole way. That's just so amazing to me. Think of the eons it took to evolve that complicated strategy, I guess you will call it. But that is apparently being disturbed by these introduced milkweeds that we have all over our ranch because we didn't know any better. Sorry, we thought we were helping the monarchs out. And they do eat it. I mean, the caterpillars do eat it, but then Martha or somebody was telling me that it causes some deformation in some of them, and it apparently, because it blooms for a longer period of time, they'll just hang around longer, and that messes up their whole migratory schedule. They don't get where they're supposed to get in time. 2 more orange butterflies to confuse you. They feed on nectar from many flowers like all butterflies. A favorite of the Gulf fritillary is the lantana. That's also one of my favorite plants. Okay, we've hosted butterfly counts since at least 2005, and the counters send me results each year. I don't suppose Linda's here, is she? Linda Cooper? No, okay. She heads up the butterfly counts. And my spreadsheet that she has provided me with since 2005, the species that I enter, my spreadsheet now has 75 species they've found on Forever Florida, including on the ranch side. White peacocks in the top left, that's a white peacock in the top left, was very common, is very common in Melbourne Village, where I lived until April of last year. And the female and male black swallowtails, the top center and right, are on a firebush. The female has blue on her hind wings and the male has more yellow. The painted lady, left center, looks a little like the monarch family. The Cassius blue next to it is tiny, as are the others to its right, the gray hair streak, and then the tiniest, orange Argo skipper and the checkered skipper in the far right, in the middle. Most, if not all of these butterfly photos were taken by Linda Cooper. Linda and her husband Buck led butterfly field trips at the Merritt Island Wildlife Refuge when we had the what's now called the Space Coast Birding and Wildlife Festival every year. And I was privileged to go along on some. And Buck has passed on, but he put out a butterfly guidebook. And Linda's still in there fighting. The bottom left is another gray hair streak, and then a red admiral, a cloudless sulfur, a silver spotted skipper, and another cloudless sulfur. Some cloudless sulfurs have spots and some don't. Oh yes, we have spiders. It's the silk that's gold colored, not the spider. It's just the golden orb weaver. They are often called banana spiders, and their webs shine golden in the sun. The Argiopes or Argiopes, and I don't know how to pronounce this, and I meant to ask Jim Angie and I forgot. Do anybody know? Well, anyway, it's spelled Argiope, and its web in the bottom left photo is white. The red bands are on its legs. The little boy is Jim Angie's son, who's now a man. So it's an old picture. Crab spiders don't spin webs, but they will attach a silk anchor to something and spin out a thread to hang from. Can you see the yellow crab spider in the pine lily? These are just a couple of our frog species. The little green guy is about as big as my thumb. You see the shiny spot behind its eye? What do you think that is? Yes. Ear. That's its eardrum. They've got to hear the other frogs croak, you know. It's its eardrum. Our native frog population of little green tree frogs is being decimated by the Cuban tree frog. It eats them. I have seen the last green tree frog I saw was probably 5 years ago on Forever Florida. I haven't seen any Cuban tree frogs out on Forever Florida, but we used to see them almost every night in our house in Melbourne Village. And if you see one under your eaves or by your door or anything like that, it's a bad guy. Kill him if you can. My husband used to just grab them and mash their heads in with his thumb. Right. So what I did was I'd get 2 newspaper sleeves, put one over each hand, distract the frog, climb up on a chair because I always had to get up somewhere, and distract the frog, wave my fingers around, and he's watching that, and I grab him from this side. Then I'd turn the sleeve inside out and tie a knot in the plastic and go put it in the freezer. Now, I made the mistake of letting some out about after just 2 days, and they revived and hopped away. So leave them in there if you want to try my system and you find any. Leave them in there at least a week. And I buried them in the yard and found where armadillos could smell them. I didn't bury them deep enough, you know, and they dug them up and ate them. I guess the slime by that time was off, or the armadillo didn't care. But they are awfully slimy. The way you can tell, you don't want to confuse like the brownie. See, there can be brown with stripes on them, look a little bit like a leopard frog, but the leopard frogs are native, but they are usually in wet spots, not out, you know, at night, so you're not likely to see a leopard frog. The chances are you're seeing a Cuban tree frog. The big eye bumps, if you can tell the difference, they have a bigger mouth, big enough to eat the little frogs, and big eye bumps, and that's a way you can tell them quicker, but they're not just from their color. Okay, I think that's enough about them. Anyway, that slime is gross not only to us, but also to the birds. The birds won't eat them, they're too yucky. No, yeah, you can click now. Okay. Yeah, isn't that sweet? Now, that's Bill Crott's picture, the one that deer kiss, we call it. And it's something more pleasant than the slimy Cuban frogs. Yeah, we have lots of deer, and during hunting season, we have lots more deer. They know they're safe on Forever Florida. Believe me, we know that they know that because the deer population really goes up as soon as they start hearing those pops over in the neighboring lands. Click. And panthers do range through Forever Florida. It's a wildlife corridor between the Kissimmee River, which connects to the Everglades, and the St. Johns, which connects to many suitable habitats to the north. We've had panther kittens born at least twice, actually on the ranch, but in the slough, and then they go over onto the Forever Florida, the natural side. Laura's nodding. We were on horseback one day, and I was way in the back of the group because my horse had a foal, and she didn't want her foal anywhere near those other horses. So I didn't see this, but Laura was up in the front on a horse and actually heard the mother calling the kittens. There were two following her and chirping like a bird, right? And I saw them from way back there, and a long tails. They weren't very big. I didn't see the mother, but here are these two cats, but they obviously were not bobcats, and so our foreman turned around and looked at me, and his eyes were real big, and I said, "Are those?" And he said, I didn't have to say anything. Anyway, we saw them through the summer, the cubs or the kittens, and one a whole lot longer than the other one. I think probably that was a female, and maybe the male had dispersed already a little sooner. But once I saw her, the one that remained anyway, I think it was a female, sitting in the shade with bright yellow grass behind her, and she was in silhouette, looked dark. And I thought, maybe that's why people think they're black panthers. Ask anybody at Florida Tech, you know. But really, though, I think it's the Bagheeras in the Jungle Book story, the movie that came out, the real black panther in India that gave it that name. Our mission statement is long, but if you can remember conservation, education, and heritage. Conservation, education, and heritage, you'll have the gist of it. The mission of the Allen Broussard Conservancy is to preserve and protect fragile ecosystems of Florida's native wilderness, provide a permanent protective habitat for wildlife, maintain the historical ranching operation, and educate the public about the importance of conservation and the preservation of our unique ranching heritage. This is the last slide. This road reminds me of a Robert Frost poem you may have heard. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I marked the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And that is what we are doing at Forever Florida.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Mike,
Thank you all.
a few questions. Do you mind, does anybody have a question for Martha? Has gone that way? Yes.
I was wondering if all of it would be burned annually.
No, actually, after one, I should keep my eyes open. Actually, there's not enough fuel by the second year after a burn. And so nature, the burns were 2 years or 3 years apart. And so what we do, or always did, was have a mosaic pattern where we would burn these 1 year and the others the next year. And if something made us delay and we didn't get it done the right year, then the next year was okay. So 2 or 3 years is what the natural cycle was.
Great, great.
Anybody else? Questions? Somebody?
What goes on with the ranching operation?
What's going on, did you ask? What'd you say?
Yeah, what is the ranching operation?
Okay, well, the ranch we've had the longest, and because we we leased the ranch part to the Kempfers. Some of you know the Kempfers, an old cattle family, old cattle raising family, and so the ranch is still there. It doesn't look the same as when we were managing it, but it's there.
For those of us who have never been to Forever Florida, are there hours or days, or how do we
We
get
don't
there?
do that anymore. We used to have hours, we were open to the public, general public who could come anytime, anybody. But now we don't do that anymore. We've reduced our staff from about almost 50 to 2. And, but we have field trips now, and groups of 20 to 12 to 20 can, any group, church group, any group can get together. 12 to 20 people can come out and set your own date. Our next one is on Sunday the 21st of this month, and some of you may know about that one already. I don't know if you want to say anything about that or not. Now I've already said something.
You let the bird out of the
I let
bag.
the bird- oh.
Yeah, we are actually, they honored us with a field trip, and it's about 20 people, and we have about 5 more specific spots open left, so we were like putting it in our newsletter or whatever. They can come up to me.
Okay, so go see Carol about it. And that doesn't need to be your only one.
No,
So-
she just told me today that it could be 2 in one day, so we'll
Yeah,
have to
yeah, you know, we can do that.
establish what.
And we could have a picnic lunch in between. All you have to do is let me know. I'm the one who'll be going. Mhm.
My question is for Laura. Tell us what you think about Forever Florida's future and how you feel as the next generation. What do you see is coming?
It's a little discouraging, to be honest. Closer to the mic. I just said it's a little discouraging, to be honest, because we need somebody to step up to the plate and help, right?
Yeah, she's right. We are in conversation with other conservation groups, and with the universities. We thought we had a deal with a group, I won't name it, but then we found out that what they were really interested in was agriculture, and they wanted to see how they could use the natural land for agriculture. So we would make sure that it's in any agreement with any group. We had hoped that the Nature Conservancy might like to do it, and we've had members of the Nature Conservancy that we've known forever and ever on our board of directors, and right now the word I got was that they are no longer acquiring land, they're just trying to work deals helping other people. Is that it?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Very good.
Y'all were wonderful. Thank you.
It's a wonderful place to honor too, and we'll get some information for you, come out and maybe get a chance to go there. We really hope and dream that someone will take it over and just keep it going forever, so we really appreciate that.
Well, I will say that there would be an endowment that would encourage people. We want to get as much of the land as we have. As I say, we've got up to 93%. I think if we get, like 95, 97, 98%, something like that, it'll be a little bit more attractive. And with an endowment going along with it, some group is going to take it over.
Absolutely. Again, that's such an honor too. Well, hey, thank you guys all for coming tonight. Did you have a question? I saw a hand go up.
Clarify that a little bit when you're saying you have about 93% waiting, 95.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking percentage of acreage, percent of the acreage. We've got all the big lots. We have all the lots that might possibly have some way of being developed. So it's protected now. Conservation easements on it and on the ranch. Different kinds of conservation easements, but all of it for no development. So it's safe because whoever does take it over, whether they buy something or the trouble is we have to be careful that people are not buying it as a way to sell it for development,
Dave, we have one more question.
Well,
Martha?
I would encourage people to go on this trip because we took one of their tours a couple years ago, and it was when you wanted to see the old real Florida with those big buggies. That was wonderful. You really get to see what Florida looked like before all the development came in. So I would, if anybody would, there's a few spots open. It was a wonderful trip.
Thank you.
We, of course, now have the hat out of the bag, and so if you want to go, which I'm sure you all would like to go, we thought we only had one trip with 20 people, and it's got about 15 already. So if you do want to come, just contact me individually. Do you have a question?
I just want to thank our chapter for having the wonderful Broussard Conservancy. Thank you, Margaret, and Bill, who's no longer with us, everyone. The Broussards have not only done this incredible project, which is beyond belief, they've educated the community years ago about the value of scrub habitat and introduced us all to scrub community and how special it was. They were so supportive of the EO referendum, the very first one. So these are very special people. These are people who are themselves treasures in our community. This is a very, very important opportunity you have here today.
Well, I have to tell you,
This story.
I've just been the luckiest person in the world. For one thing, I've had a lot of good luck, but the best luck was my wonderful husband.
A standing ovation.
Okay, we can go, in other words.
Yeah, once again, we're just honored that you were able to come and offer us this, trip out there, but it's just a taste of Florida, how it used to be. So, you got my email in the newsletter, so if we can try to get the other one, we'll work it out. I think we are up to the raffles here at the end. So go ahead and get your tickets out. And just a reminder that, keep in mind also the next
okay.
board meeting on Sunday. That's gonna be in May, help me, 11th? Is that what I said? I think it is.
No, I don't have a home anymore.
That's much better. But that's a treasure too. That's just a 54-acre land. It's right near the mall. It was there before the mall. So there's all these little things we really like. So we are gonna start calling it out. Are you guys just gonna yell or?